are with our first episode of the StackCast and our first guest here today as well. We have Reuben Yap with the Firo Project. Say hi, Reuben.
Hello, hi. Glad to be on, and nice to be on the very first episode of StackCast and Stack Wallet. It's been like a really important part of our ecosystem, being one of the, I think, only open source wallets that fully support all our privacy features. So really excited to be on here and share a bit about what we do and yeah.
Well, thank you. I'll be excited to learn a little bit more directly from you, right? I've heard a little bit working with CypherStack, obviously, but we haven't ever, I think, directly spoken outside
Mm,
of maybe a couple interactions on Discord or something. So
yeah, I think this is the
go
first time
ahead
I'm seeing
and
you.
yeah. So if you would go ahead and just kind of introduce yourself and exactly what your position is with Firo, and we'll go from there.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Ruben. I am basically the project steward of Firo, and what that basically means, it's kind of guide and lead the project on behalf of the community. Uh, you know, um, I guess I come from a legal background. I was a lawyer for about like 10, 11 years prior to going kind of full time in maybe 2018. I've kind of been in the, I guess, crypto space since about like 2012, 2013 or so. And, I've grown to be like very, very supportive of privacy tech, which is kind of why, I choose to build on Firo. And I think it's like one of the most important things that we kind of take for granted, especially in this time, because I think, digital privacy and especially financial privacy is a kind of relatively new concept that I think has taken time for, I guess, like the mainstream consciousness to embrace. But we are seeing very interesting developments in that regard. But yeah, that's a bit about me.
All right, so you've kind of been around in the crypto space since not exactly the very beginning of Bitcoin, but around the point when I think people really started to hear about it more. I know, I think around 2012 was when I first kind of became aware of the existence of cryptocurrencies in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, like how I actually got, got wind of what this crypto thing was because I started a VPN service in 2007, and back then, like basically VPNs were kind of like considered like taboo, like, oh, why would you need a VPN? You must be doing something illicit. And it's kind of like in the same position what privacy coins are today, right? But now like VPNs are so widespread and nominal. Like every day, you watch some YouTube VPN, like, hello, it's not VPN, and it's just
Oh
so
yeah,
natural and it comes bundled in everything, right? Like even
NordVPN,
Brave,
Surfshark,
yeah,
everywhere.
Brave and everything all comes with VPN services. And unfortunately, back then, even though we weren't doing anything illegal, we were cut off from a lot of payment processors who were just saying like, yeah, you're not doing anything illegal, but we're not comfortable with the business you're doing. And I'm like, why? I'm not getting chargebacks. I'm not doing anything illegal. What's the issue? And they're like, nope. And then we kind of realized that, hey, access to the financial system is basically kind of permission, and it's kind of arbitrarily decided, right? Like if I'm not doing anything illegal, if I'm not cheating anyone of money, why do companies be able to say whether I can or cannot do business or not, right? So we found that kind of ridiculous, and I guess that's kind of when we were introduced to stuff like Bitcoin, and yeah, I guess like the rest is history from there. But that's kind of how it all started when for whatever reason we realized that, wow, we're being cut off from the system. And unfortunately, even though it's been so many years, we can actually see this problem has actually increased and not decreased, right? Like the Canadian truckers thing, regardless of whatever your stance on vaccines or whether it was right or wrong. I mean, I think we can all agree that what they were basically cut off from their bank accounts, things were frozen, and they're like, wow, for what? Was what they were doing really that serious to have warranted, like, basically being treated in the same ground as a terrorist, and I think that's going to be actually the way moving forward. And we are seeing that money is no longer just money. Money is actually a weapon, and I think that's going to be more the case, especially with the rise of like central bank digital currencies and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yes, I'd say I'd love to get your opinion on that, but I have a
Mm.
feeling I already know, so we don't have to go there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Canadian trucker incident is kind of, I think, what caught my attention and made me first start to feel like maybe this isn't just something people are talking about, that is a could maybe happen someday kind of thing. Kind of like
Mhm.
net neutrality, for example, was brought up as like everything is gonna crumble to pieces once this is out the door, and at least in US news anyway, and that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, I mean, I
So it
think
seemed like that kind of thing, but now we're seeing things actually play out in real life, so it's a little scarier than that.
yeah, I mean, like, it's previously been a topic, but it's always been like, oh yeah, it's China doing it, right? Wouldn't it happen in a first world country or like a developed Western nation? But we are starting to see actually Western countries, they are wanting to do the same thing. They just have better PR, right? Like that's
Yes.
how I kind of feel about it. But I think people are starting to see the difference, and that's kind of why we find that cryptocurrencies, because now we have a lot of memes, we have a lot of like sometimes it feels like our industry is a bit of a joke, right? Like like people tweeting random stuff to the moon, and that's all fine, but it's always often at the expense that crypto is seen as a joke, and in a way that's I think a bigger like it's people that something people underestimate, like what was from the cypherpunk origins and stuff like that, like this was supposed to be an alternative financial system, is an answer to kind of like the incessant printing of like central banks and stuff, but we're seeing these things happen in the crypto space as well. It's kind of like replicating it but making it worse. So in a way, the biggest travesty to crypto is that it's no longer this supposed to be the answer to the financial system. It's now more like replicating the financial system but in a unregulated wild wild west manner, right? And I think that really hurts the legitimacy of it, and I think it's something that we really have to think about, right? Like what are we actually in crypto for? Are we here to get rich off dot coins? I mean, that's fine, that's what it is. But I would really like to see, I guess, like a back to its roots, perspective, that it was supposed to be used as currency, supposed to be used as money, and even now, like the big Bitcoin, it's the way it's gone. I mean, it's a bit controversial, but I think it's kind of forgotten its roots as to what it was supposed to be, rather than just like, oh yeah, laser eyes to the moon and stuff like
So I
that.
completely agree with this. I think people have every right, if I can interject a little opinion here,
Sure.
every right to treat it that
Mm.
way if they want, and to
Yeah.
make coins to be
Mm.
treated in that way, and that's
Yeah.
fine. But at the same time, it does kind of obscure the kind of serious use cases out there, unfortunately. And that's what I've noticed when talking to any of my friends and family about
Hmm.
anything in the space. It's very, oh, well, you're not going to talk me into that. And there was never a point to talk anyone into anything in the first place, but it's kind of almost seen as this get rich quick scheme kind of thing. And unfortunately, you can't take away people's right to do that if they want, but it
Yeah.
really does kind of drag the whole movement down with it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's fun, I think it's quite reflective of the world we are in today, that, it's fun stuff like Dogecoin. Like, I have nothing against Dogecoin. I think it's fun as well, right? But the fact that, that those kind of narratives have kind of overshadowed what crypto was supposed to be, now people are like, oh, payments are boring, that narrative is old, now it's all about like Pepe or NFTs, and that's all fine. I really nothing against them. I like a good joke. I like NFTs. I see the potential of it, but I guess I feel that it's kind of overshadowed what it was, and I think that's kind of like what projects like ours are still trying very hard to do. We're not abandoning the whole importance of a currency, while at the same time embracing that, hey, there's all this other stuff out there, and it really needs privacy. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, agreed. So getting a little bit more specifically into Firo here,
hmm
why don't you go ahead for anyone that's not aware by this point, give us a quick elevator pitch for Firo. Let's go.
Right. So, Firo is a privacy-focused cryptocurrency, and I think we are one of the very few cryptocurrency projects that actually independently build our own privacy protocols. And we take a very, very strong focus on building stuff that, first of all, it's not gatekeeper, it's not under some weird, license, and it doesn't have very, very minimal trust requirements. There's no like secret people that have to create some like trusted setup ceremony. And we are seeking to build like open source privacy protocol solutions that really protect privacy, but not at the cost of too much complexity, or being in the place where for whatever reason the core team is being forced to stop work on it, other people can take over, right? And I think that's one of the core tenets of what we're trying to build, and that comes in the form of the Lantus and Lantus Spark. But we also see ourselves, of course, we love to see ourselves as a cryptocurrency, as something to be used as money, a digital cash. But we also see that, look, I think it's also not right to totally ignore what else is happening in the other parts of the crypto space. And there's all these tokens out there, being a governance token, meme tokens, all this stuff, other stuff, and it's been always quite a trouble to actually tack on privacy to all this other stuff, right? Like even from NFTs and everything, you want to show off your NFT, then suddenly you kind of like reveal your net worth where you got all this other stuff. And we believe that all these other tokens and other stuff also needs privacy, but it is very hard to build that on their own like native layers, right? And that's why we also have a tokenization layer, which allows people to build their own coins and tokens or whatever, or bridge existing ones from other ecosystems and enjoy all the same privacy feature sets that Firo has at very low fees, at very low cost and stuff like that. And that's kind of how we see ourselves as a kind of like privacy infrastructure for the rest of the crypto ecosystem. So yeah, that's kind of us in a nutshell, and hope that explains it. Yeah.
So I've never heard it explained in the sense of the infrastructure kind of description
Mhm.
that you just gave, but that is very interesting. And that sort of leads, I guess, into my next question, which was going to be, what do you think, I guess I should say now, besides that, is something that sets Firo apart, not in the crypto space, but in the kind of privacy coin space specifically?
Mm,
What need did you feel existed um, that needed to be solved by another coin, basically,
right. Well,
by
we
something
have to
new?
we have to kind of go back to 2016 when Firo kind of started its mainnet. And back then it was called Zcoin, because it was based off the Zero Coin protocol. And at that time, there were basically only two kind of relevant privacy protocols, which was something called coin join, which is like coin mixing. It's kind of like you mix the coins in a thing and everyone returns, but that has a lot of problems because it's interactive. That means you have to find other people to mix with, wait for them to mix with you. And even now, like even with the most advanced coin join technologies, it takes quite a bit of time, sometimes hours, sometimes even days or weeks to get a proper level of anonymity. And that's kind of sucks, right? It's like had to find people you mix with and stuff like that. And then the other one, which was ring signatures, which is I guess most famously used in Monero, which was basically kind of hiding yourself in a group of a relatively small group of people, at least on a transaction basis. Like when I do a transaction, I grab like 5 or 6 other people with me, and then I could be one of these 6 people, but outsiders can't really see, which of the 6 or which of the 16 people they are. But obviously that has limits, right? 1 out of 16 isn't that big, right? And now obviously, back then Zero Coin was, I guess, its first incarnation where it allowed people to burn coins and then retain a cryptographic receipt that actually allows you to prove that you actually burn coins, that will give you the right to kind of make new coins out of thin air, but from the ones that you burn, but then you are using that receipt to show that you did burn coins, but not which ones. So that means, like, instead of being limited to like 6 people or 16 people or whatnot, your potential anonymity set is with everyone who has burned coins before. So obviously that set could be in the thousands, hundreds of thousands, or whatnot, right? That obviously offers much more plausible deniability. So that was where we started. Obviously, as time passed, other types of protocols have come by, like stuff like Zcash, Zero Cash, which uses ZK snarks and other stuff, or Halo 2, which is also from Zcash, or Mimblewimble. But they all had, like, I guess I would say, drawbacks. Some of them had trust requirements, means that you have to trust people to come together. It's almost like the Lord of the Rings thing, where they all come together and make sure you have to make sure there's no one ring, or you have to destroy that one ring, right? And we found those type of trust requirements quite, I guess, like, kind of anti to the whole, like, philosophy of crypto, where it's like, don't trust, verify, right? Why should I have a trusted setup? Why should I need to trust someone? And it often also involve very kind of complex mathematics and cryptographic assumptions that haven't really stood the test of time, but also kind of like only very few people in the world understood, which often led to like heavy centralization. People would use it but not completely understand it. That was one thing. And Mimblewimble came about, which was also very, I guess, simple and nice, but it was still not a perfect privacy protocol solution. It's still, the early version still required interaction. Both sides had to be online, and it still didn't do a really good job at hiding how the funds move across, which is what we call the transaction graph. Like, it goes from A to B to C to D, right? It hid amounts very well, but it didn't really hide the flow of funds that well. So that's why we say, like, look, we want to kind of have a balance of very, very high anonymity sets, kind of like what Zcash does, but without any of these like trust requirements. And at the same time, it's something that I would say, like, a competent programmer with some cryptography knowledge can pick up and understand quite intuitively. And because especially this type of technology is very disruptive, it's important that if for whatever reason we have to disappear or whatnot, people can take over it. And this technology is not like just restricted to ourselves or even the Firo core team, even if we are the ones behind it. So we really saw this need. And I mean, right now, our latest development, the Lantus Spark, a lot of the ideas, have been instrumental in, I guess, having Monero, which is, I guess, the #1 privacy coin in market cap and also in usage, has taken a lot of like key ideas, such as addressing structure, our use of the ZKP that we use into building their own privacy protocol called Seraphis. And I guess that's a testament to, I guess, the impact of our work and the value of taking different approaches rather than just going with whatever everyone else is doing. So I do think, at least on a technological and research standpoint, we are hitting way above our, I would say, like, weight versus, the project size and stuff like that. So that's something I'm really proud of. And I think that's something that's really important, right? Because if one day one of these other privacy protocols fails or turns out to be, not very good, there needs to be diversity in that regard. So yeah, I'm very happy that I guess our research has given birth to a whole new family of privacy protocols.
Definitely. And
Mm.
another personal opinion, I guess, I don't personally see an issue with there being multiple options for people instead of just one kind of central default coin that must be used
Mm-hmm.
if you want to really interact with cryptocurrency. So I feel like that may be a little bit controversial for some, and that's fine. And uh, that's why, versions going back to kind of StackWallet. So this is how we tie in together, right? With
Mm-hmm.
Firo being integrated into StackWallet, which is made by our company. But this is why like the Stack duos exist out there. If you feel very strongly about that, for example, you of course, it's not a full Bitcoin or Monero maximalist app, but it is kind of a dual, and that's the idea. But that's fine. You can totally operate like that if you want to, but I respect the idea of not necessarily coming in to scoop up everyone that's invested in something else, but to give an option that you felt like did not exist in a way that you were 100% satisfied with to begin with.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think there is some value in maximalism, in the sense that, like, you're defending your project of choice at like, at everything. But at the same time, I think we have to realize that a lot of the times maximalism can strengthen and polarize communities and make it like, oh, we have a very like violent, not violent, like very vibrant and cult, but at the same time it's kind of cultish, right? But that often leads to, I would say, intellectual laziness, right? Obviously, like, people, there's still good people in Monero, there's still good people in Bitcoin, but by and large, most people are just parroting what a small group of people are saying, and that actually leads to kind of laziness, like intellectual laziness, because if all you're concerned, if the only thing that can come good is from your project and nothing else, you're going to kind of like blinker yourself to the latest developments out there. And I think that is a disservice to the community as such. I would think, like, stuff like Seraphis wouldn't have come if not for a project like ours that dare to take a different approach than others. So I think, whatever your viewpoint, there is value in having different approaches to one problem. And after all, crypto is supposed to be about decentralization, right? So I think the more options there are, the better. But I think we have to be careful that, yes, there are obviously scams and stuff like that, but we also shouldn't be too caught up in tribalism. And I really embrace having a multi-coin wallet, because I see crypto as this, like, whole ecosystem with different niches and stuff like that. One coin shouldn't be able to do it all. There's obviously design trade-offs with certain stuff. If you just want to be money, you don't do all of this. You want to do DeFi, you have to do this. So I think it's very wrong to kind of say one coin should do it all. And I think that's kind of the hole that Bitcoin has kind of dug itself into, and which is why, like, we're seeing kind of not very optimum solutions like BRC20 and Ordinals. They're all interesting, but then they wouldn't really design for it. As a result, they're kind of like not as good as they could have been if they were designed specifically for them rather than as a workaround for them. So I think that is a testament to the fact that different designs have different benefits and they all come with trade-offs. So, I just hope people realize that, and I really embrace, well, at least I know Stack Wallet's also, trying to make the maxis happy, and I understand that. But, I think Stack Wallet as a whole, embraces a more inclusive crypto ecosystem.
Yes. And it's probably not even going to be possible 100% to make some people happy, and that's fine. But to at least have more options, more choice equals more freedom. So I'm all for that.
Yeah.
But you did briefly mention in passing a few minutes ago, Lantus. How about we kind of get into that just a little bit? Refresh me, since it's been a while since I've dug into it a little bit, how exactly the whole protocol works, and then maybe we can jump into the changes that have been made.
Sure. So Lantus is a bit different. Actually, it's pretty different than Lantus Spark. Lantus is the protocol that Firo is currently on and the one that StackWallet currently supports. And Spark is our next gen privacy protocol, which is probably going to be launching testnet in a couple of weeks, hopefully. What Lantus allows you to do is like previously, well, in a nutshell, it allows you to burn coins of any amount, like arbitrary amounts. Like it doesn't have to be in tens, fives, 20s, or stuff like that. It's just like any amount, 153.523. Yep, I can burn that amount, and I can redeem any arbitrary amount for it. That means I don't have to redeem the exact same amount. I can only I can redeem 0.76 or 0.52 or any amount. Obviously, it has to be smaller than the amount that I burnt, but it means that now, I basically can destroy any amount of coins and redeem them for brand new ones at any time in the future. And that's the basis of how Lantus works, which is burning arbitrary amounts, redeeming arbitrary amounts, and that protects the sender. If you use new addresses, it protects the receiver and partially the amounts, because you cannot see the change amount that's hidden. So that's what Lantus does. What Lantus Spark does is, introduce a whole new addressing system, which means that now you can hold your assets with the amounts totally hidden. So I don't have to expose them. I don't have to redeem them. I can just basically send them to you, Alexa, and no one knows how much you have received. And yeah, that's amazing. Sender, receiver, amounts are all completely hidden with Spark. So that's kind of what it is in a nutshell. Obviously, there's a lot of innovative cryptographic components and research that goes into building these protocols, but I don't want to go too technical into that. Yeah.
And to rewind for just a moment, just for anyone curious, how would you describe the benefit of being able to even burn any of your currency in the first place?
Well, I would say it's both the way that I see it is it's both a pro and a con. So I guess the pro is that your anonymity set is with anyone who has burned coins, right? And that set constantly grows, right? Rather than in ring signature models where you constantly, you're mixing with 16 other people in Monera's case. Well, here, when you're redeeming something, it could be, if let's say I redeem 1.7 Firo, it could have been from any of the other burns or the that anonymity set is like many thousands, right? So on a single transaction value, you're getting much more anonymity, and it's not so dependent on how many people are using your coin, because as time passes, there'll always be people burning, and that set is constantly growing, right? Rather than being limited to 16 other people or so, or stuff like that. Obviously, it's a bit simplistic, but that's kind of it in a very watered down understanding of that. And I guess having a very large anonymity set matters, because when if you're using like the ring signature model, if you're dealing with someone on a repeated basis, there are certain kind of things that happen. It's not very good against targeted surveillance. Like if someone really wants to target you and tries to surveil you, there are ways to do that. And at the same time, repeated transactions can actually reveal the true sender, because statistically, 16 and 1, 16 and 1, what is the chances of this common source appearing in all these transactions to a common like let's say an exchange can probably guess that, oh yeah, this is probably the same person or so. So I would say in that case, the anonymity set is much greater in Lantus. So that's the benefit. And rather than it merely being just like, 1 out of 16 chance, it's several magnitudes higher to try and gain some sort of statistical significance when your anonymity set is so much bigger. So yeah.
All right, thank you for that explanation. Next, I was hoping maybe you could describe Firo's consensus mechanism to people, give us a good idea of how that's working.
Sure, we use a hybrid system that's a mixture of proof of work and also master nodes. And I mean, I understand a lot of people say like, oh yeah, proof of work is the only way to go. It's the only fair way where you can remain permissionless and decentralized. And let me kind of like explain a bit about that and kind of like the trade-offs, right? So before going into the trade-offs, let's kind of explain how our consensus mechanism works. So what happens is the master nodes are basically nodes that have 1000 Firo serving as kind of a collateral behind it. And the only reason for that collateral is to kind of like what we call Sybil resistance, right? Because if you're going to be relying on this group as a point of authority, they should have some stake in the value of the project, right? So basically, our system where when you have 1000 Firo backing it, you can create a master node, and that allows you to participate in the first level of consensus. And how that consensus work is that right now there's about like 4,000 over nodes that earn a portion of the block reward, and automatically 400 of these 4,000s, there are several groups of 400, which is called quorums. And so that means at any one time, there are probably 3 or 4 quorums of 400 that are existing at any time. And they constantly automatically reform every X number of hours or so. I think it's like every 12 hours or so. That means it's not a fixed group. It's constantly changing from this, being selected from this group of 4,000 people. And there's no central authority that decides this selection of who gets into a quorum. It's done deterministically, meaning that it's done randomly, but you can always calculate the way this is being selected. So there's no like central authority selecting it. And randomly from this group of several 400 quorums, the block will say, okay, it's your turn to decide which is the valid block. And it will take a look at the blocks that come, and the 400 that has been selected for that particular block would vote to see which is the block that I saw first. And if more than 60% of the 400 vote to say, I saw block A first, rather than I see this other conflicting block B, but I saw this block A first, if more than 60% of the 400 sign that block and say, I saw this one first, that block becomes final. And that means no matter what, that block is going to be the one that goes into the final blockchain. So that's really beneficial, because what it means is that, unlike in pure proof of work system where you have to wait like X number of confirmations, and that's kind of arbitrary because it can always be rewinded, like 12 confirmations. If I can get enough hash power, I can rewind it. But with the masternode system, I get almost finality within a couple of seconds. That means within a couple of seconds, I know that this block, at least my transactions, are not going to be overridden, and that means 51% attacks cannot happen. Now, this is great, but what happens if there is a concerted attack against these master nodes, right? Like, let me say, I see a bunch of these master nodes hosted at the data center, and I wipe out that data center or something like that, right? Or knock it off. Well, then after that, the secondary consensus mechanism, which is the pure proof of work, means that it is still the miners that propose the blocks, and then it will kind of revert to pure Nakamoto consensus. So what it means is basically almost 2 layers. If you want to attack our chain, you both have to either acquire enough Firo to control the masternode layer, which is like, you have to basically, hurt your own investment, right? You buy the Firo to kind of attack the coin that you're getting it, or find some way to bring down, a significant proportion of this network that constantly changes. It's not easy to attack 4,000 nodes at the same time, especially even if it's 400, it's rotating and being selected randomly all this time. And on top of that, if you still want to kind of get that in, because it's still the miners that propose, you would also need to get more than 50% of the hash rate. So that means you kind of have to attack the coin from 2 different fronts to actually, successfully compromise Firo. So I think that adds a lot of security, and it adds a lot of benefits towards like just day-to-day use case, right? When I'm transacting someone in person, I kind of wait like, 6 confirmation, 10 confirmations or something like that. And even, that's all very arbitrary. I want to be certain, kind of like a credit card, or maybe credit cards are not a great example, like cash, right? I just pay it, it can't be reversible, and that's it within a couple of seconds, rather than having to guess, oh, is this final or not? Is this going to be overridden or not? So I think that adds a lot to the functionality of the coin and also the security of the coin. Now, I know there are many others that would say that, proof of work is the only kind of like pure way to kind of get consensus, because there's no special permission, it doesn't favor people who have a lot of coins. But the reality of it is that, proof of work is also subject to many of the same problems that people are not very willing to admit. Is that, let's say, like, if I have an ASIC for a certain algorithm, right? Well, then it's kind of centralized, because there are only a few manufacturers in the world that can make the ASICs, and the people who build the ASICs have to basically first dibs, whether to even sell those ASICs or not. There's a lot of secret mining going on. But if you have an algorithm that is, let's say, CPU specific or GPU specific, that, more, I guess, like, focuses on commodity hardware, which is what we want if we want a decentralized proof of work system.
A little more inclusive, maybe, to more.
Yes, because like most people have a CPU, most people have a GPU, rather than an ASIC where they only can do one thing. At least for CPU, it's more likely I might have one already sitting in my house, regardless of whether I want to mine or not. But the problem with CPUs is that, with the existence of large botnets and a lot of like old computers being infected, or even server farms being infected, means that when you will actually see that many of the CPU dominated algorithms, most of them are being dominated by botnets. And the reason why that is because there's one person that basically has access to thousands of computers, but is not paying the cost for it. He's not paying for the hardware. He's not paying for the electricity and the ongoing. So he has a very unfair advantage over an honest miner who still has to pay for his own costs, right? And that means that actually, it may be not profitable for me to mine with my CPU, but it's very profitable for a botnet to mine, which is a form of centralization as well. Which is why we actually believe that, despite its limitations, the graphics cards there's much less chance of a GPU botnet. Not to say that they don't exist, but they're much, much more rare, because high-end GPU cards typically run in your home. People actively use these computers, so any sort of like virus activity are more likely to be spotted and stuff like that. And they're also a lot more rare. So that's one thing. But the bad thing is that as a GPU miner, there's no loyalty, right? Because you basically mine whatever coin that supports your coin, and what that means is that you can easily switch from coin to coin to coin, which is freedom. But at the same time, from a security standpoint, if you are competing for security, all these other coins, and it's dependent on like market value and stuff like that, your security is going up and down dependent on the price. And that's the really kind of like poor way to kind of base your security off on. And we have been subject to, people who are just malicious and hired like 50,000 GPUs to attack us. And when they're done, they don't lose the value of their GPUs, because they can continue to mine other stuff. So I think there's a real benefit to having a hybrid system where you are both having the permissionless nature of proof of work, but at the same time getting another layer of security, and also rewarding loyalty for providing a steady form of security that is provided by the master node. So I think we're offering the best of both worlds, and I hope people see that don't just say, oh, proof of work is the only way. And obviously we're still looking at other consensus mechanisms, but I think for the moment, I think this serves us really well. But we do want to kind of like moved away from the requirement to have a fixed IP address that holds this master nodes and stuff, and that's something we're actively looking at. Yeah, that was a lot of mouthful. Yeah.
Well, one thing that kind of came to my mind while you were speaking there a moment ago that's maybe slightly off track, but I'm curious. So, I'm in the US, of course.
Mhm.
You are not. I was curious, is there a pretty diverse kind of global spread of people actually engaging with the kind of Firo community and sort of investing in this project? Of course, besides where we live, maybe, but
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, of course, as a privacy coin, we don't like get any particular analytics, but from at
of
least
course.
like from the videos that we push out, because like we still post our videos on YouTube. We also are listed on some centralized, a lot of centralized exchanges, and we've been engaging them to say like, hey, could you give us like the rough breakdown of where are our users coming from, at least from the IP address, right? And we see that, yeah, we're actually getting like quite a decent number from the US. We actually have quite a lot from, like Western Asia, which is like Middle East, Turkey, and stuff like that. And then after that is Southeast Asia. So I would say like US, then like East Asia, Europe, and Southeast Asia. I think Europe and Southeast Asia are like kind of similar-ish. So it's quite a global, quite a global like community. And obviously, some of them kind of like fall into their little niche. Like I think the Turks like to stay within their own, Turkish language groups and stuff like that. But I think it's quite heartening to feel that Firo has such a global reach. And I think that's also kind of like the benefit of a proof of work, right? Like, regardless of where you are. And I know I don't think it was like a significant proportion of a community, but I remember some of our community members are like, hey, I'm actually mining Firo with a couple of rigs with mine in Venezuela. It's been like feeding my family, because that time when the Venezuela, I don't know what was the name of their currency, I'm so sorry. It was like rapidly devaluing, and they were like saying like, hey, you guys actually helped us a lot. And I think that's kind of like the beauty of the power of proof of work, where you could just run like a bunch of GPUs, and be a part of the economy, and yeah, don't have anyone to tell you what to do, right? So I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, some of the more serious use cases, I guess, really come into play. I guess
Yeah,
more the people that are not looking to just kind of invest in something that they think is interesting, but to really benefit from a lot of the privacy tech that we've kind of discussed so far.
Yeah, I think there were two like use cases that was actually like really interesting. There was a time where Iran was actually facing floods, right? And Iran is a heavily sanctioned country, and no one could send money to them. And we were aware of, because we didn't have anything to do with this, right? But there were a few community members that set up a donation link, and people donated using Firo to these sanctions countries to kind of donate for flood relief. And yeah, I mean, yes, it is technically sanctions evasion. First of all, we have nothing to do with that, but it's for a good cause. These people produce receipts what they were buying and stuff like that. And even recently in Turkey, and even in Bali, where there were some earthquakes. There was like people sending Firo to actually help people like globally, right? I don't have to worry about like all this transfer fees, all that stuff. It was just like instant, easy, and stuff like that. And in cases like this, right? I think it's really powerful to have this like separate financial layer that allows you to transact value privately, without having to review what causes you support or stuff like that. I think disaster relief is one of those things that we can all agree are good. Like floods, earthquakes, and all the sort of natural disasters. And it's kind of unfortunate that a lot of the times this sometimes these sanctions can affect like regular people that may not even support the government that's being sanctioned, right? So I think that's really real. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of an interesting use case as far as the kind of natural disasters you just mentioned. I hadn't ever thought about how that might have the power to kind of rally people in that way, but that's very interesting.
Yeah, it was really really nice to see like people like I think there was this guy called Kartal. He's like from our Turkish community. He was like taking fewer donations, buying rice, buying stuff. And sure, maybe a small effort, but it was nice seeing this happen, right? And seeing this being enabled by, like the Turkish currency is like inflation is like crazy, right? It's like 50, 60% per annum. So like even for them, crypto is we often we often think like, oh, crypto is so volatile and stuff like this. But in many countries, like Turkey is considered a regional power, and yet its currency could be devalued so much over a short period of time. And for them, no matter what the volatility, cryptocurrency was actually a more valid thing to hold, even rather than their own national currency. I mean, we always hear about Venezuela and all these like weird countries that even Venezuela for a certain period of time was doing very well. It shows how fragile you know fiat currencies can be, and we kind of assume that the US dollars will be always here to stay. But I think we're beginning to see the cracks, and I'm not saying that crypto solves that all. I mean, sure, cryptocurrencies can also crash and stuff like that, but at least there is an alternative, and I think as long as there are alternatives in the way they keep each other in balance, because fiat currencies can't be total, can't do everything, without any sort of repercussions because there's an alternative. If there was no alternative, they could do whatever they want and we're stuck with it, right? But I do feel that cryptocurrencies, regardless of what you think about it, offers a really, I would say, a credible alternative, and people are starting to see that even like Venezuela had a lot of gold reserves that were kept in the UK, right? And because the UK say, oh, we don't support this government, therefore we're not giving you access to the gold that you stored in our vaults, and you're like, wow, that means now it's basically politicians and regulators that decide, whether you morally have the right to have this stuff, even though it's a country's reserves, which whether you agree with the Venezuelan government or not, like who is to make that determination that you can access to the country's reserves or not. So I think people are beginning to wake up to realize that, hey, I think one of the beauties of cryptocurrencies is that yeah, you kind of have ownership of your cryptocurrency. No one can easily take that away from you, and one of those things that you really need for that is privacy, right? Because if I can hold an address, I can sanction that address. We're seeing this happening in Ethereum or Bitcoin, where you have blacklisted addresses, blacklisted funds, and stuff like that. That can easily be expanded, right? And if you have a privacy cryptocurrency, that's a lot harder because it's just like cash, right? How do you like distinguish one coin to the rest? And yeah, I think that this has serious consequences, and obviously people say that it can be used for nefarious reasons. But I would say that let's be real, like really real here, right? Who is facilitating the real money laundering at scale? It's the banks. So it's gonna happen regardless. And to just kind of paint the bogeyman on cryptocurrencies, which I don't think even form like 1% of the actual you know money laundering that is happening. I think that's just finding a very useful excuse when the perpetrators are right in front of you and have continued to do so with very very little repercussions, right? I mean, take a look at HSBC, right? They were money laundering Sinaloa drug cartel money, it's like directly and intentionally so, and no one really went to jail. So I think I'm not a proponent of, like, of course, this type of like really damaging illegal activities, but I don't think it's a valid argument against banning privacy coins, banning cash, banning all this type of stuff in the name of
Well,
protecting
exactly.
people. Yeah.
Exactly. And you say cash, and that's what always comes to my mind is if you're going to have that outlook with cryptocurrencies in general, or maybe specifically privacy coins, then you kind of have to take the same approach to cash.
Right.
And I don't think people claiming that are likely to also be anti-cash or stop engaging with it at all and using it because of how some others do. Because it doesn't have the same reputation. Because
Or
it
it's
became
dying though.
obviously mainstream enough for normal uses that the other uses are forgotten about for the most part. And I think that's probably the goal to get to with
Yeah,
digital currencies as
definitely.
well.
Hopefully we get there one day, but yeah, obviously it's the headlines that they make a big thing, right? Like, oh, North Korea launders $500 million using Tornado Cash and whatnot. Like that sort of news, unfortunately. When there are a lot of other legitimate use cases, like Vitalik, wanted to donate to Ukraine without people knowing about it, and he did that using a privacy preserving mixer. So what's wrong with that, right? So yeah.
Yeah, perspective for sure.
Mhm.
Um, and then to kind of jump here again, sorry to keep jumping around a little bit. I just want to make sure there's nothing that I'm missing that I wanted to make sure
Mhm.
and ask about. You did mention quite earlier on here that Lantus Spark is looking very near to now. So besides that kind of timeline, and it doesn't have to be a super strict timeline. I understand it's kind of hard to pin down an exact date
Yep.
for a lot of these things, but what else do you see coming up in the kind of near future with Firo, and then kind of a little bit farther out, a few years down the road? Where are you seeing things? What are you expecting to be rolling out? Give us a little idea.
Right. So obviously, Spark is going to be on testnet, and maybe in like 3 to a couple of months more, we'll launch mainnet, and that will, I think, lay the kind of like privacy infrastructure for the next few years that we wouldn't want to change too much, right? Obviously, the research is still ongoing. We still have like sort of performance and anonymity improvements that we're looking at, like tertiary research and stuff like that. I think that's like kind of later down the road, but it's the research is happening right now, right? And we'll see where we want to fit that down, maybe a couple of years down the road. But the next thing that we kind of really want to focus on is something called Spark assets, and there was this layer where people could create their own tokens or bridge existing ones from other ecosystems into Firo. And we're really
And this
going to
is
be
completely new to me, by the way, completely new. So this is very
yeah.
interesting.
So the idea is that you could create your own token and get all the same privacy benefits in Firo. And I think one of the really interesting things is that the asset type is hidden. And what that means is that on the blockchain, when you see a transaction, not only sender, amount, and receiver is hidden, even the asset that you're transferring is hidden. And I think that's a really big thing because okay, like something like Monero is already functioning kind of like money and stuff like that, but the community is very against any sort of additional asset support, NFT support, because they're saying we are digital cash and nothing else, and that's fine, but I feel that we, for us, with like saying, look, there's an opportunity to be made here, because rather than just, restricting the usage of Firo just as being a currency, which we definitely want, and that's, really, really what we aim for. But the thing is that even if you create your own, let's say Alexa coin, right? And fine, maybe only 5 or 10 people are using it. But the thing is that because the asset type is hidden, your anonymity set will be shared with everyone else that is using Spark assets, including people that are using Firo. So I may be transacting Firo, I may be transacting Alexa coin, I may be transacting a meme coin, but everyone shares in this crowd, right? That means we're in that same set. So from the blockchain, I'm like, I don't really know what's being transacted. It could be a useless thing. It could be actually something valuable, but they are all indistinguishable. So what that means is that even if the usage of one particular token or currency is may not be a lot, but together it becomes stronger, and together it augments the utility of Firo and also the anonymity set of everyone else that's using it. And ideally, we know of some people building bridges that like .oracle. That means they want to bridge stable coins and other stuff with to Firo. That actually means that, now you're in this sea of all these different tokens that's all growing the anonymity set. And that's something it's not just for people using Firo. There's plausible deniability, right? They're like, I don't really know. I could be transacting something else. I could be, we even support private NFTs. So I think that's a really amazing use case. And we will be, dedicating our resources to kind of building out that ecosystem, from having like DEXs, cross-chain DEXs, cross-chain bridges. Not all of them may be maintained by us. Some may be, by partners or community members that decide to build on it. But we really kind of want to lock down the usability side, because I think we spend like a long time, focusing on the backbone, the research, the tech, and all of that. But I think, we have to also focus on the utility, the usability, and the use case here. And I do think Spark Assets is that use case. And I think, I really am excited to see what people build on it. And yeah, that's kind of like the vision of it, right? So obviously, hopefully, we might be seeing, voting protocols and all this sort of stuff that require privacy to be built on Firo, which, is custom built for privacy, rather than having to tack it on some other system like Ethereum and whatnot, which can be very expensive and often has like gaps in privacy. So yeah, that's our hope, and I think that's personally very exciting for me.
And
Yeah.
any rough idea of how much time there might be until that becomes a reality?
Well, the paper's already done, so we've already kind of figured out the math. We kind of figured out how to do it and everything. We just haven't started the coding. I guess that may be sometime in 2024, right? I think that would be once we launch Spark and everything. I think 2024, which is hopefully what we're trying to do, and launch Spark Assets. The bridges are actually, .oracle, I know, is at least building it already, both with Lantus and also Spark Assets in mind. So I would say maybe 2024, not so much. And after that, we'll be looking at more like decentralized ways to do our consensus layer and things like that. I really am excited of Firo's development, and Spark, I would say, is the first big, like super big improvement that we're really, really excited to roll out, and it comes from the years of research and experiences that we earn through, like, blood and sweat to get to this point. So yeah, I'm really, really excited for that.
That's not as far as off as I expected, actually. So I'm kind of impressed.
Yeah.
And then lastly, I want to make sure there's nothing that you really felt strongly about bringing up, or really maybe haven't had enough time to get into deep enough here that you'd like to share. I don't want to cut off anything
Yeah.
particularly important to you.
I mean, one of the things that we're kind of been like working on the side, it's just more of like something that we found like as an important thing, is basically the concept of e-voting, privacy preserving e-voting infrastructure, right? And some people may not know, but in 2018, Firo actually participated in our blockchain was actually used in the Thai Democrat Party's primary elections, basically the election to select its party leader. And basically about 127,000 votes were cast nationwide in Thailand, and that elected the party leader for the Thai Democrat Party. So that was a really interesting use case, and I think that was the worst kind of first large scale blockchain election that was held on the blockchain. And obviously we've learned a lot from that. And one of our cryptographers, Aram, he's from Armenia, and he came from a situation that I think there was a lot of violence because people were questioning the results of the votes and stuff like that. He saw people die, and he was like, this is so senseless, right? There should be a way for people to vote, be very certain of their results, and that their votes have been counted, and the legitimacy of this, without having this
And there
to
is.
yeah, there is, right? And they are. So we've come up with like a cryptographic protocol called Aura that allows people to vote in a privacy preserving way, and requires very minimal trust of the election board. So even the election board can't decrypt the votes and tell who has voted where, but can be certain, but the individual voter can be certain that the vote has been correctly counted, has been correctly tallied, and correctly reflected in the final vote. And at the same time, there's it hides ballot progress. That means you can't tell how the vote is progressing. It supports all types of different voting protocols, whether it's just single vote, multiple choice, or first past the post, or even like weighting type of votes. The system is flexible enough for this. And we originally designed this as a way to kind of do like Firo governance and whatnot, but I think it has much wider implications here. It could be a very efficient and economical way to at least start with polling. Like right now, like Gallup polling, all these polls to say, oh, who's winning, who do you vote for, is done through very primitive means. People call up, do phone calls, and say like, hey, what do you think? Do you want to participate in this poll? And I think you're only going to get like very, very few people who have nothing better to do to pick up this call. Because if I get such a call, I'll be like, no, screw that, right? But and that's how polling is currently being done, right? But if you allow people to do that through an app in a very like privacy preserving way, give it a small little incentive, you could do these polls a lot more frequently and a lot more cheaply, and yet still, that means now people have a much direct way to express their opinion in a way that's still privacy preserving. And I think that may actually change the way governance, not just in cryptocurrencies or DAOs or whatnot, but the world. And I think I'm really excited. I hope that we will see, we can get like funding for this to build this protocol out. Maybe one day it'll come to Firo, but um, this is something that I guess it's been like a side project that we've been very excited about. And yeah, and that's I guess on voting. The other thing that is also coming out, which is our kind of, oh, I wouldn't call it like an official project. It's kind of like a project with me and a couple of other community members. We've come up with this fun little Firo Fox NFT project, which also has a little game associated with it that's designed to teach people about privacy and stuff like that. And we also want to reward people who have contributed to our community, who have been supporting us throughout the years, and have a little fun at it. Because yeah, yes, crypto is serious, crypto is all of that, but it's also the Pepes, it's also the Doge, and we also have to not forget that it should be fun. And a lot of people think that NFTs are shit and whatnot, and sure, a lot of them are money grabs, but at its essence, it's just a technology, and if you do it in such a way to just reward people that are valuable to your community and let people have fun with it, why not, right? It's just a tech. So I'm really excited to see that happen, and hopefully we'll be starting on the BNB chain, but eventually, as they break free from surveillance, they will be bridged into our Spark assets as well. And that's kind of like when they break free from the matrix and stuff like that. So I think that would be fun. I mean, even though I wouldn't say it's a major thing, I'm just excited to just see it happen and have a little
Small
fun.
things are good too. We'll take small
Yeah.
news. And what's interesting to me
Hiro-chan.
about that too is the potential to kind of get more of the artistic side of the community possibly involved.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. Because, only a few people in this world, like I guess there's not few people, like much smaller subset of people can, get the code, get the cryptography and stuff. But people get cartoons, people get fun little games, and I think this is a way to get more people involved. And we have to reach out beyond just like the privacy, loving community, and make it more mainstream. I think this is one of the ways that we can do it. A small little thing, but it's fun, it's harmless, and yeah, I'm excited to see that happen.
Well, you can come for the NFTs and stay for the privacy features, so that's fine too.
Definitely. Yeah.
Whatever works. All right. Well, thank you so much for giving kind of me, of course, a refresher on everything, and then getting into a little bit more of the details here and some of the newer news. This has been very cool.
Thank
And
you,
of course, I
Alexa.
finally get to actually speak to you instead of hearing about you here and there all over the place.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I guess like, if people want to find out more, we're on Firo.org. I guess our community is, I think the most active on Discord and Telegram, which they bridge to each other and all the, I guess, you put the link somewhere, but it's also on our main page, Firo.org. And we also have forums where you can participate in governance and expressing your views and stuff. And, we really want to see more of you people. And I'm really excited also because Stack Wallet has been one of the better wallets that's supporting us. I know that you guys have been like some difficulties, but Diego assures me that these are all going to be fixed in the next couple of weeks. So I'm really excited to see that, and especially once Spark come along, I think Stack Wallet, is also interested in making sure that that's integrated as well when it goes live. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the Stack Wallet shout out there again. And, kinks are still being worked out. Obviously, but for anyone else curious, everything is still, we're still in open beta right now. So for the fact that things are, for the most part, working pretty smoothly with kinks here and there, good sign. No current issues with Firo I'm aware of. So
Yeah, I mean, like,
that's plus.
remember, Stack Wallet is fully open source. The code is for everyone to see. I think the only way they make money is through swaps in it, and there've been some really good integrations. I think I saw Majestic Bank and I think Crocodile was recently integrated and changed now. So all these are non KYC ways. So that you can get Firo. So like, even if you don't have access to Binance or whatever and whatnot, you still can get access to Firo. You can still sell Firo. You can still do all this other cool stuff. So I think Stack Wallet is a great way to get started in your Firo journey. And yeah, they also have like a cute little Firo waifu avatar thingy. Thing called Firo Chan, which whenever you do a transaction, it starts kissing you. So I love that.
It's
But
pretty cute.
yeah. So yeah, do
Well,
you check out Stack Wallet?
thank you for doing that. I certainly didn't want to shill too hard for Stack Wallet on this, but it has to be mentioned, right? So,
Definitely.
well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I'm not sure what exact time it is for you right now, so I hope it's not too terribly early or anything. But
I was just heading to noon, so it was a great time.
okay, not too bad, not too bad. All right. Well, maybe we'll talk to you again soon at some point as more things kind of evolve and come about. I'm sure we'll continue to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, stay in touch. See ya.
All right. Thank you.